I didn't know the ceremony had aired until I heard my name during a commercial break. I was standing in line at the grocery store, half listening to the overhead screen while checking for weekend discounts on frozen dinners. Then I heard it clear, clipped, formal. Dr. Lena Marlowe, recipient of the 2023 Rural Service Recognition Award. I froze. Not because I doubted it, but because I never expected it to reach here. The man in front of me kept unloading bananas. The cashier didn't flinch. But I stared at the screen like it had called me out directly. For a second, I just stood there, hand hovering above a basket of grapes, not sure if I should feel proud, angry, or something else entirely. Because a few weeks earlier, someone had said out loud, in front of a packed administrative meeting, "She's not really a doctor, though. I mean, she's a DO, not MD, and she doesn't do hospital rounds." He smiled after he said it, like it was a joke. A harmless jab. And people laughed. That's how it happens, usually. Not with an accusation, but with a suggestion. A laugh. A shrug. A dismissal so casual it slides under your skin before you realize it cut you. My name is Dr. Lena Marlowe, and I am a licensed doctor of osteopathic medicine, board certified, and working full-time at a community clinic in rural Missouri. I've treated over 4,000 patients in the last 5 years, most of them elderly, uninsured, or falling through cracks large enough to swallow them whole. I don't wear a white coat every day. I don't have a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows. But I am a doctor. I didn't always say that with confidence. When I first started, I'd correct people gently. "It's Dr. Marlowe, actually." Some nodded. Some looked confused. A few smiled like they were humoring me. The ceremony that aired was a state-funded public health recognition event. Quiet. Barely marketed. Recorded in a city auditorium that smelled like floor polish and plastic chairs. I got an email about the nomination 2 months ago, forwarded from a colleague who said, "You probably won't win, but they asked me to put someone in, and I thought of you." I didn't think much of it. These things came and went. But the day I received the official notice that I'd been selected, I didn't tell anyone. Not because I wasn't proud, but because I'd learned not to expect applause. When the email came, I was eating lunch at my desk, carrot sticks and peanut butter between phone calls. I read it twice. Then once more, slower. Recipient, Dr. Lena Marlowe. 4. Outstanding primary care contribution to underserved populations. Event, Rural Service Recognition Ceremony. Broadcast date TBD. I didn't feel fireworks. Just a slow warmth rising behind my ribs. Not validation. More like quiet evidence that I hadn't imagined the work I'd been doing. I thought about telling my supervisor. Then I remembered the meeting. The one where Dr. Brent Holloway, head of surgical partnerships, made that offhand comment. "She's not really a doctor, though." And no one stopped him. No one looked confused. No one said my name. So I didn't say mine either. The day of the ceremony, I kept my clinic schedule as usual. 8 appointments. 2 walk-ins. 1 diabetic foot exam. A child with a persistent cough. And Mrs. Halverson, who came in every other Tuesday just to talk. I didn't tell a single patient. I didn't post about it. Didn't even wear anything special. Just my usual. Dark jeans, soft blue sweater, and the lanyard with my ID badge.
Dr. Lena Marlowe, Do.
The ceremony was being held 3 counties over in a public building they'd refurbished just enough for ribbon-cutting photos. I drove myself.
No escort. No entourage.
Just my second-hand Toyota, with winter tires, and a travel mug that always leaked a little when it tipped over. The auditorium was half full. Awardees sat spaced out, some in press suits, others in worn jackets with state logos. We weren't glamorous. We were the kinds of people who did the work no one wanted and didn't expect to be seen for it. They gave us name tags on thin ribbon cords. No seating chart. I sat in the 3rd row and kept my hands folded in my lap. When they called my name, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Dr. Lena Marlowe, Community Health Access and Response Clinic, Vernon County. A few people clapped. I walked up, accepted a certificate, a handshake, and a small gold pin that said service above self. There were no cameras in my face. No music. Just the flicker of a recording light on a mounted camera in the back. I nodded, smiled, and returned to my seat. Later that night, I stopped by my parent house. They lived 2 towns over, retired, mostly homebound. My mother set out pie before I even took my coat off. My father asked if my engine was still making that noise in 3rd gear. I told them about the event. They smiled, proud but reserved. "Are you going to frame it?" my mother asked, holding the certificate. I shook my head. Maybe. I left it with them. Told her she could hang it if she wanted. She did, by the kitchen door. And then, I went back to work. Because in medicine, especially at the community level, there's no pause for recognition. Just people. Just symptoms. Just lives in motion. I kept seeing patients. Filling prescriptions. Navigating Medicaid calls. Explaining prediabetes for the 9th time in a week. And somewhere in the background, that ceremony got chopped into segments, captioned, and aired on a local PBS affiliate that reran public interest programs between city council meetings and weather reports. It wasn't meant to make a splash, but it did. Because 1 week later, I got an email from the state health board. Someone from their outreach office had tagged the clip on their Twitter page. It had picked up traction. Nurses, primary care doctors, and residents from across the Midwest were commenting. Finally, some recognition for rural care. These docs are the backbone of underserved counties. Dr. Marlowe sounds like she actually listens. I didn't respond, but I read every word. The next day, Dr. Holloway walked past me in the hallway. He paused, tilted his head slightly, and said, "Hey, Marlowe, that was you in that PBS segment, right?" I looked up from my patient notes. "Yes." He nodded. Didn't know they gave those kinds of awards for outpatient care. I smiled. "They do now." He blinked, then walked away. The clip didn't go viral. It wasn't that kind of story, but it traveled. Quietly, like water seeping under a door. Over the next week, emails trickled in. First from colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years, old classmates from med school, former coworkers from my rotation days, even a nurse I'd done outreach with during flu season 3 years ago. Saw the segment. About time someone noticed. "You've always been the real deal, Lena. I showed your clip to my residents this morning." It felt strange, like a conversation I didn't start but had somehow been pulled into. The patients didn't mention it. Not directly. But I noticed changes. Mrs. Halverson brought me banana bread wrapped in foil and said, "I always knew you were special, hon." A quiet young father who rarely spoke above a whisper said, "Congrats, Doc," before walking out. And a teen girl I'd been treating for anxiety finally looked me in the eye and said, "I Googled you. You're legit." That last one made me laugh. But not everyone was thrilled. A week after the broadcast, I was called into a meeting with the clinic director, Kendra Rowe. Her office was neat to the point of sterile. Artificial orchid on the desk, color-coded folders, a chair that made you sit too straight.
She didn't waste time.
"There's been some chatter," she said, folding her hands. "About the broadcast." I nodded. "Okay." Some department heads felt blindsided. I didn't speak. I let the sentence breathe. "They weren't aware you'd been nominated." I smiled lightly. Neither was I until I was. Kendra shifted in her chair. "It's not that we don't support your work, Lena. You know that. But next time something like this happens, we'd appreciate a heads up." I tilted my head. "Are there guidelines for personal recognition now?" She blinked. "It's just professional courtesy." I thought about Dr. Holloway, about the laughter, about the phrase, "not really a doctor." I sat forward. "I've shown up here every day for 5 years. I've treated patients others turned away.
I've worked weekends.
Covered holidays. Stuck with this clinic when we were on the verge of losing funding. I don't owe anyone an apology for being acknowledged." Kendra held my gaze a second too long. Then she nodded slowly. "Fair enough." That was it. But the silence after that meeting felt different. Heavier. Emails took longer to be returned. I stopped being CC'd on certain threads. A colleague canceled a collaborative project without explanation. I wasn't being punished. Not exactly. Just dimmed. Softly pushed back into a corner I'd never agreed to stand in. But the clip kept moving. One day, I opened my inbox and saw a message with a subject line that made my heart skip. Request to feature your work in AMA Spotlight Series. American Medical Association. I opened it. We're featuring frontline physicians serving rural communities across the country. We'd love to include you, Dr. Marlowe. Saw your PBS segment. It resonated. I stared at the screen, motionless. This wasn't my imagination. This was national. And it had all started with a clip most people didn't even notice while they bagged their groceries. The AMA feature came out a month later. Nothing flashy. Just a short column, a modest photo, and a paragraph describing my work. Dr. Lena Marlowe, DO, delivers high-impact care to medically underserved populations across Missouri. She has become a trusted presence in communities often overlooked by the system.
No hashtags.
No video. Just the facts. But something shifted after that. The clinic newsletter ran a tiny blurb about it, almost as an afterthought. But I noticed my colleagues started addressing me differently. Dr. Marlowe. Not Lena. Not her in primary care. It was subtle, but consistent. Then, in a faculty meeting, Dr. Holloway did something I hadn't expected. He was giving a rundown of outreach priorities, rattling off metrics and proposed programs, and then he said, "We should consult with Marlowe's team on this. They're setting the standard for community engagement." There was no sarcasm. No eye roll. Just a sentence, offered plainly. I didn't smile, but I did write it down. For myself. Because here's what I've learned. The loudest people in a room will always try to shrink the quiet ones, especially if the quiet ones are competent. But competence builds proof. Over time, it stacks quietly. And eventually someone notices. I didn't ask for recognition. I asked for respect. I stopped trying to convince people who had already decided what I wasn't. Instead, I focused on becoming undeniable in the work itself. Months passed. The clinic offered me a leadership role on a new patient advocacy initiative. I accepted with terms:
Autonomy.
visibility, a say in who gets to call what real medicine. I still wear the same clothes, still drive the same Toyota, still eat lunch between calls. But something is different now. Not in the way they see me, in the way I see myself. There are still patients who call me Miss Marlowe or nurse, and I still correct them, gently. It's doctor. But you can call me Lena if that's easier. Not because I need the title, but because it was earned. The ceremony aired during a break in someone's day. A flicker on a screen. Easily missed. But for me, it was the moment the silence broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just completely. If you've ever been told that what you do isn't enough because it doesn't look like someone else's definition of success, I want you to hear this. You don't have to speak louder. You just have to keep showing up. Eventually, the right people will hear you. And the wrong ones, they'll be watching from the sidelines. When the broadcast begins,